Hello and welcome to Black Crow Gaming. My name is Arron and I am your host, and I am here to talk about everything Adeptus Custodes. My loyal 10,000. We have had an upgrade. As you can see, we have finally been able to change some of the visuals. I've really worked hard on being able to improve the audio, and I hope this is just an all-round better experience. This week, we are going to be talking about the latest attachment that has dropped for the Adeptus Custodes, and that is the Lions of the Emperor. And I'm going to be focusing on the meta combos and strategy that are currently out there. But before we do that, I need to talk to you about some of our wonderful sponsors. If you like to get your miniatures a little bit cheaper, go to Glasshammer Gaming, and then you go onto their website and you put in BCG5, you get, Black Crow, not BCG5, Black Crow. You get additional 5% off what's already discounted miniatures, which is very nice. If you also go to the Terrain Forge and you put in the BCG5 at Terrain Forge, you get 5% off their amazing bespoke terrain. You couldn't ask for more. And if you like our content, please feel free to like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification. All of this really helps us grow. And if you really want to help, if you feel really giving, feel free to chuck us a super thanks for once you've watched the video. Every little bit helps us, and we will continue to try and improve our content and grow. Anyway, let's get into the presentation. So, what are the meta combos and strategy out there for Lions of the Emperor? Now, I love the Lions of the Emperor, and there's some real key points as to why. For one, that +1 to wound gives list building a new dynamic. It's not, you don't just want to be looking at your generic custodian units or with units built in with Lance, because now actually having that +1 to wound means our sisters get +1 to wound, and our infantry custodians get +1 to wound. That's big. Brings a whole new dynamic, which is actually pretty cool, because as we're going to go through some of the killer combos, you're going to see why that will make a big difference. Shooting in this list with troops is strong, and I'm going to show you why. There are some excellent enhancements, in particular Superior Creation and Ad Monimortis. The Superior Creation, being able to get your character back up on a 2+ with its 4 wounds remaining at the end of the phase of which it died, very strong. Ad Monimortis, giving that extra plus strength, plus AP, plus damage. That also makes, for 10 points, that makes your character extremely killy. Extremely killy. And in here there are some game-changing stratagems, and we'll talk about some of those later in the presentation. Buff units that got cheaper in the data slate changes. So there were buffs to units that got cheaper in the data slate changes, which I think was great. Custodian Guard got cheaper, characters got cheaper, and they all really appreciated the buffs that come from this detachment. One of the negatives, though, is that there is no mortal protection. There's no mortal wound protection, no dev wound protection. You're pretty much vulnerable to those style of attacks. But do I think that's going to be a big deal? I don't think so. I think Games Workshop has done a really good job of toning down the amount of dev wound output from armies. Don't get me wrong, there are some armies that do a lot. But those armies have also got access to a lot of other good things, so they might not be using them. This gives Sisters units an interesting buff. That +1 to wound, like I mentioned earlier. Witch Seekers, Flamers with +1. Very nice. The Vigilators with the Strength 5 AP 2 damage swords. All of them got a lot better. Terminators are now arguably the most flexible unit for Adeptus Custodes in this detachment. The stratagem, Unleash the Lions, to allow them to become single units of 1 and just pop them all over the board, very strong. And don't forget, +1 to hit can be impactful. And the reason it can be impactful is there's a lot of modifiers out there, and essentially it's giving you ignore modifiers to hit. Very nice. Your sisters also hitting on 2s. Very nice. Makes them quite a tasty unit to take at quite a low points cost, I might add. So some of the meta combos, let's talk about Allarus Terminators. So the Allarus Shield Captain combo 1. Superior Creation, reviving on a 2+ full wounds remaining, coupled with the Allarus Captain ability to reduce damage to 1 for a phase, alongside the unit's -1 CP strat ability to utilise Gilded Champion to reuse the ability later. So essentially you've got a Shield Captain that is very difficult to kill, because you need, for that phase when he is in or she is in danger, you pop that ability to drop it all down to damage 1. Great. You've then got to fail 7 saves before the model is dead. When it does die, then on the 2+ it comes back with all of its wounds remaining, and for 1 CP you can do that ability once more. Very strong. You have to put an insane amount of damage in to kill that one Terminator captain. And I'd like to also add as well, it's just not going to trade well. Like, no matter what your opponent does, they have to put in a lot of resources. So the trade of resources against what they're going to kill isn't great for them. It's really good for the Custodian player, because ultimately, if your opponent is focusing really hard on that Allarus Shield Captain, he's not focusing so hard on the rest of your army. The combo 2 is the enhancement Ad Monem Mortis. Used on an axe, gives a terrifying stat line of 6 attacks, strength 12, AP 2, flat 4 damage. Very good. In this already tanky Terminator build, you could make it incredibly deadly. Yes, you're sacrificing that 2-up, get back up ability, but ultimately it depends on what you want to use the unit for. There is an argument to say that that you could use this on the standard Shield Captain and just give them an axe. And it does make that standard Shield Captain very deadly, but arguably more deadly than the Allarus and other, because you get to use both martial guitars for a turn. So you can make them lethal, sustained at strength 12, at 6 attacks, AP 2, 4 damage, which is quite a scary amount of attacks. But saying that, I personally feel that the Allarus Shield Captain combo number 1, the Superior Creation, that is a combo worth investigating, and I think you're going to see that have some play in competitive builds. Now, the Allarus Terminator combo. The stratagem to unleash the lions allows units of 2, 3, 5 and 6 to split into units of 1. Coupled with the ability to go back into strategic reserve, this gives your army a reliable source of action utility. And it does, because ultimately that rule used to be that once they went back up into strategic reserve, they had to immediately come back in the next turn. That's not the case anymore. They can go into strategic reserves and they can just sit there until you need them. That is important. And bear in mind, when you're dropping that one single Allarus, they still, because of the +1 to wound, punch up. They can actually do an awful lot of damage on their own, and it's not that single miniature is something that can't be ignored, and that's what makes them really powerful. So the meta combos for a Shield Captain on a Dawn Eagle jet bike. So for 175 points, using the enhancement Presidious, you can have this character as a lone op character with stealth. Although this is pricey, the ability with sweeping advance to bounce around the table and hound the flanks could be rather valuable. And I suggest you take Hurricane Bolters if this is the play for you. And what makes this really strong is obviously it's quite a lot of points. It's a big asset to lose if you lose it. However, the opponent again has to get within 12, and they're still shooting it and attacking it at -1 because of stealth. And a Shield Captain on a bike is not an easy target to kill. They're quite good in combat, still going to have quite a lot of attacks. They've got a lot of shots from the Hurricane Bolters. They still get that +1 to wound on Hurricane Bolters, which are twin linked, which then makes that unit quite a nasty play piece. I mean, you're going to be using them to go score you points, to hound the flanks, to get rid of their scoring assets. And if you play it right, you could actually be a real menace with this unit. It's really nice, and I think there will be some people out there experimenting with this lone op character, and I'd be really interested to see how well they do. So the meta combos for Sisters of Silence. Yeah, that's right. A meta combo with Sisters of Silence. they benefit hugely from this army rule. +1 to hit, +1 to wound. Arguably, they get the most benefit from this. Vigilators coupled with a layer in a Rhino makes for a terrifying cheap combination. Just to remind you all, their melee weapons all have devastating wounds. 2 attack, strength 5, -2 AP, 2 damage, and the layer is 4 attack, strength 6, AP 2, 3 damage. The Rhinos but the taxi. And you've got to remember though, the sisters are T3, so they will die quickly. However, for the amount of points it costs to run that unit, get them out the Rhino 3 inches, move them forward 6, so they've been able to travel 9. Then they've got their charge. A layer has also got fights first in the unit, so if it doesn't go well and you just get countercharged, at least you could be able to get some attacks off. I really like it. It's a cool combo and it does do a lot of damage. And if you pair that with the precision stratagem, you could quite easily kill the precious cargo that may be in a unit that you charge. Very strong, very tasty, very effective. Now, Witch Seekers also benefit massively with that +1 to wound flamers, which could just destroy chaff. A unit of 4, you know, you think about on average, they're probably going to have between 10 and 12 wounds come out. So they've hit 10, 12 times because they're flamers. You're then wounding most things. You're wounding on 4s if they're toughness 4, and you know. But now all of a sudden you're doing it on 3s. That makes a big difference. That's a very big difference. And all of a sudden your opponent is having to roll a hell of a lot more dice from a 50-point unit, which arguably they shouldn't have to do. But if you're rolling dice, there's always a chance that you're going to fail those saves. And I really like that. I think that's a really nice touch to the army. Moving on. Wardens. Meta combos for Wardens. Yes, Wardens are still extremely good. No shock. They're super strong, and in this attachment they can be so frustrating. The stratagem Swift as the Eagle provides a D6 reactive move when the unit is targeted with a shooting attack. After the attacks are completed, coupled with Warden's survivability, correct positioning could disrupt your opponent's plan completely. So to give you an example, I brought out one Warden squad to the middle objective. I killed the unit on their combat. I was then shot in return. I popped my Feel No Pain. So I knew from the first lot of shooting I may lose one Warden. I did lose exactly one Warden, but I was like, okay, I'm going to spend 1 CP to do the Swift the Eagle, and I got lucky and I rolled a 6. Now I deliberately placed those units so that they were right next to a wall. What that meant was, as soon as I rolled that 6, I was able to put them behind a wall, out of line of sight from all the other targets that had lined up to shoot it. And all of a sudden your opponent was just completely unable to activate any more key units. More importantly, that Warden squad is then there to survive and fight another day. Extremely big play, extremely important, and if your opponent is not prepared for it, it can be game changing. You know, Wardens are extremely versatile. With the +1 to wounds made them even better. If you couple that with Blade Champions, Trash and Valorous Shield Captains, they're all good with Wardens. So you could just take any character now. All the characters in this detachment are good. They're just good. The Precision Strat, Peerless Warrior and Gilded Champions can be paired to allow Wardens to really make charging them punishing. Now, what do I mean by that? Gilded Champions, fighting on death. Fight on death is beautiful. And I think I may have made an error earlier when I talked about Gilded Champions. So being able to fight on death as a character at 2+, if you use the precision strat, so just remember the wording of Gilded Champions, you act as if the model is still alive with 1 wound remaining. That means they can use that precision strat, because it's when you activate this model for attacks. If that whole unit has precision, you know, and if they're going to get wiped out from a really nasty combat threat, at least you know you can take the thing that makes that unit really nasty out of the game. Because not many things in the game can handle many attacks from Wardens and a Blade Champ, especially if you're focusing on one model. Extremely strong, really cool combo, and I hope that you all out there get a chance to use it. I really love it. The meta combos for Custodian Guard, oh boy, these guys can pack a shooting punch. So 170 points for 4. Inquisitors make for deadly shooting combo. Wounding guns with the +1 to wound. insane. So Draxus and an Inquisitor both have dev wounding guns. So you could take double Inquisitor, 2 units of guard, and you just bring them out. And if you get them on the objective, they're full rerolls to wound. So the Inquisitor has a 2d6, 18-inch flamer dev wounds, with +1 to wound, with full rerolls. Here you go. You're starting to see the story now, right? You might get 3-4 dev wounds out of that. But don't forget, you've got the grenade strat. And with an Inquisitor on a 3+ on the 3+, you get your CP back. So you basically can grenade for free. That's another 2-3 mortals, for example. You've then got the anti-infantry dev wound gun it has. Maybe that pops off. You get another mortal. And this is from your first round of shooting. You've potentially done 6-7 mortal wounds. Then you've got the rest of your guard shooting. And then what's disgusting is you double tap and you do it again. Potentially 10, 12 mortal wounds with full rerolls to wound. And all the damage from the Wardens. Very strong. And you get that from Draxus. And it's really good. It's really efficient. And don't be shocked when you're absolutely brutalizing vehicles. Because it will happen if it pops off. And your opponent will be able to do nothing about it unless they've got that mortal wound coverage. So some of the key takeaway points here is movement in this army must be on point, especially if you want to benefit from those reactive move stratagems. The tanks still work in this detachment as it doesn't penalise you when your tanks are near other units. Remember that your detachment rule only becomes ineffective when they're surrounded by other infantry units. So as long as that's in place, you've got absolutely nothing to worry about. I do feel like taking units that have Lance feels wasteful in this detachment. I appreciate that the Lance units are also our fastest units, but the bikes have always struggled to get around terrain, especially if you're playing on UKTC. Maybe not so much on WTC or Games Workshop. However, in this detachment, I will say tanks are not necessary though. Don't be surprised if you're seeing list builds nowadays without any tanks in, because actually, you know, players out there have shown that you could do an all infantry list. You will be disrespected from other players who have tanks. However, now I think with the reactive move for your Wardens and the ability to be able to use move, advance and charge twice because of the stratagem, I actually think it's quite possible just to throw your Warden brick at the expensive tank that's going to do loads of damage and quite easily kill it. And that's really exciting because you could just take sustained war. If you're getting +1 to wound, you're wounding all tanks unless they're at like toughness 15 or 4. Yeah, toughness 14. So unless they're toughness 14, you're wounding all vehicles on 4, 5 and 6s if you're out of 6-inch, which you will make sure you're doing because that's why movement must be on point. I want to add that there isn't a dominating list build in this detachment as well, and I really like that. In Shield Host and in Talons, it has felt like there's just a list build that is particularly strong. The same in Solar. However, now I feel like we've got so much variety. The best time to be a Custodian player is now because we've actually got 4 good detachments, 4 detachments that you could take to a tournament and do well with. Now, do I think this is going to be top of the meta? No, of course it's not going to be top of the meta. But do I think it's really refreshing for Adeptus Custodes? Absolutely. It makes Adeptus Custodes more interesting to play, more fun to play, and we've now got lots of different ways to play Adeptus Custodes. And when the book initially dropped, we just didn't have that, and it's taken them 12 months to kind of rebuild that. And essentially we've had a codex rewrite in some ways, because if you look at the codex now and you look at what we've got, all of those things pretty much don't exist. Everything's changed, and that is for the better, to be right frank. Anyway, that was my talk this week on the Lions. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you enjoy our new setup, and please comment below your list ideas. I'd really love to see them. Join the Adeptus Custodes Discord. We'd love to talk to you. Thank you everyone for being a part of the journey. Don't forget to like, sub and subscribe. I've been Arron. Take care.